All right, so in this video, we're going to continue talking about macroevolution and even specifically talking about speciation, as we are going to look at a couple other words that speciation can be, or that can be used to be more specific with that word. And so we're going to use these two words here for modes of speciation at the bottom: allopatric speciation, and sympatric speciation. Allo means different, sim means same. Patrick is, think of our word like patriot. This has to do with patria, the word for like homeland or place. And so allopatric usually has to do with different place. You can see in this picture the two types of fish are in two different ponds, so they speciate. And sympatric is where speciation occurs with those organisms living in the same place. So we're going to look at a couple of different ideas here. The first we're going to look at is allopatric speciation. Now, allopatric speciation usually has to do with some sort of geographic isolation, where it could be as simple as how one species of squirrel lives on one side of the Grand Canyon and another species of squirrel lives on the other side of the Grand Canyon. Why? Well, the Grand Canyon's in the way. At one point it wasn't, now it is, and so though they speciate. Here's an example of these salamanders. I showed them on an earlier video as well. And notice the white area in the middle there is a mountain range, and those salamanders don't do mountains, but they have managed to go around the mountains or form a ring around the mountains. And we call this a ring species. And this is where they have literally moved around the geographic barrier. Now, eventually, this is going to change. This is going to cause change in those species. You see this allopatric speciation very prominently in the Galapagos Islands. Darwin noticed this as well, and he was looking at the different finches and the islands. There's some of the different Galapagos Islands. They're volcanic islands. Some of them are brand new islands. Some of them are really old islands, in geographic time, which is or geologic time, which is really big or really long periods of time, but still relatively new, relatively old. And it's going to cause these islands to look different. And so you'd expect the different looking islands to have different types of birds living on them. And that's exactly what's happened. And so this idea that there was one ancestral bird at some point, and that from that one ancestral bird, many different species radiated out from them as those different types of environments came open. This is called adaptive radiation. Just look at the word adaptive. They were adapted to different environments when they moved to those different environments to exploit different resources. Radiation, think of the beams of the sun radiating out from the center. You see that here. From that one ancestral bird come many different kinds of birds, kind of diverging off of that center bird. This has to do with the fact that all these different niches became available, and as niches are available, resources are available, and you'd expect species to exploit those available niches. Now, moving on to sympatric speciation, this is a little more rare. For animals, it can occur, typically to have to do with, you think about different food sources. We talked about a competitive exclusion principle where you have two species maybe competing for the same resource. That species, the other one's the weaker of the two, is either going to adapt or die. And maybe that adaptation eventually isolates the groups and they become two different species. For plants, it's a little bit easier to understand. There's this concept called polyploidy. Poly, more than one. Ploidy, this has to do with chromosomes. And so when we were talking about chromosomes, we usually talked about pairs, 2N being our diploid pair. Well, with plants, it's not always that simple. They don't always have a left shoe and a right shoe. They may have 6 shoes in that pair. And why is this? Well, we talked about non-disjunction, and non-disjunction can cause different numbers of chromosomes to be present in the haploid cells. With animals, this is typically bad. With plants, it may not necessarily be bad because it actually may produce a hardier offspring. And so there are two types of polyploidy. Auto polyploidy, remember auto means self, and so this is where you have self polyploidy, meaning that the plant has fertilized itself and that has caused polyploidy to occur. And then allo, we just learned allo from allopatric. This is where you have two species together, different polyploidy. Species A, species B, as you see in this. Maybe species A, 2N is, our diploid is 6. Species B is, or species A is 4, species B is 6. They have two different number of gametes, and they kind of make this weird thing when they fertilize together, and then you get the idea. The 2N is 10, which all of a sudden is this completely different hybrid. And so this is where you have, again, different numbers of chromosomes than you'd expect to have. All right, so here's someone moving on, completely different idea. This guy, Stephen Jay Gould, came up with the concept of punctuated equilibrium. Let's see if we've got a picture. We do. All right, punctuated equilibrium is basically this, where you have long periods of stasis. And so here on the right, you have the picture of this. I'll explain gradualism as a contrast to this. Long periods of stasis, which is stasis means nothing's changing, followed by really short periods of rapid change. All right. Gradualism is what we talked about, that anagenesis, where you just have these really slow changes over time, almost imperceptible, and you may have this, you have different product at the end. This was one way that evolution was kind of seen. Whereas Gould came in and said, no, what we have in history is long periods of no change, but then some sort of event can occur in geologic time to cause rapid change to occur. Maybe, we'll think back to the Galapagos Islands. Maybe a new island is formed and all these new niches become available, and you're going to have change happening really rapidly. Or you have some sort of disaster that causes rapid change as well. And this is, we're going to talk about in a later lecture, talk about this idea of all the different geographic or geologic periods and what caused the separation between them. And so, here's an example of one we'll talk about, snowball Earth. Well, at some point in the past, the Earth completely froze over. This is going to be bad for life, except for those few life forms that survived. They're going to be adapt as the Earth thaws out. There's going to be a wide variety of niches. And so change is going to occur really rapidly. The change after snowball Earth is known as the Cambrian explosion. It's not because an explosion happened. It's because so many different forms of life came on the scene after that time. And Pangea is another one. We're gonna go into this in another video, so I won't go into depth here. All right. And so, real quick, talking about descent with modification, we need to deal with this with a specific part, and that has to do with the evolution of the eye, which is typically used as a way to describe how evolution works and how natural selection, particularly changes in the environment, cause these sorts of changes. Darwin looked at this in his book, and so this starts out with the idea of an eye, and the eye is just a collection, basically a collection of cells that can sense light. Well, the simplest kinds of eyes were just that. They were patches of cells, and some organisms still have these. These are called ocelli, and they're just located on the surface of this organism, like a jellyfish has these, and they're able to detect light. Well, why would jellyfish want to be able to detect light? Because where there's light, there's probably food. Or where there's a shadow, there might be food as well. You think about it that way. And so they're allowed to be able to move around. Well, this is not necessarily good because the eye's on the surface. And so it might be better over time for that eye to move away from the surface. And that's where you have the development of this little eye cup, which some species are going to have something like that, like a flatworm has something like that. And so this is where it's indented. Well, particles are still going to be able to collect in that indentation. And so it's not as good as it could be. And so that's where you have this pinhole type eye, where the opening to the eye gets really small. It's hard for particles to get in there, and the eye is able to do its job better. However, it keeps light from coming into the eye because the hole is so small. And so the next thing that kind of happens is you have this cornea, which is an external protective layer of the eye, and a lens, which allows light in. It allows that light to be focused. But then you have another type of problem. There's not a lot of depth. And so with the retina, which some of the most complex organisms have this kind of thing, they're able to have depth perception, able to perceive depth, which if you're a predator, being able to perceive depth is very important. So you always hit the mark. And so if you're a prey, obviously being able to see where the predator is too is helpful too. So these kinds of eyes have changed over time. And then even you look at the position of eyes on heads, like alligators have their eyes on the top of their head. Some turtles are able to look up. Some turtles are looking down. Depends on where they live. Owls have both their eyes facing forward in the front of their heads, whereas deer have them facing either side of their heads so they can see more of their periphery. And so you get the idea. And the eye is just one example of being able to talk about this concept of descent with modification. As time goes on, you're going to expect to see better versions of things. That doesn't mean that the old versions necessarily go away. It's just that the new versions are going to be more and more selected for.